All right.
You have the power.
We are recording,
Cool.
and I'm in charge. So let's see if our president comes back in. We'll let her be in charge again.
Jerry, I want to introduce the program tonight.
Go ahead. Oh well, yeah. Go ahead.
Jim Ford, I see him as the second row just below me. I don't know what you see him as. But I met him in the mid-90s up in the D.C. area. He used to work at Bob's BMW. I bought a couple of bikes from him. Then I saw him go to Batley's, I think, and he quit for a year or something to go learn to fly. And now he started a company, and he wrote a book. Can you see that?
See the book, yes?
Yep.
See the book.
Okay. And he's doing tours, or he's doing a riding school, or a combination of the both. And I thought it'd be nice to listen to him talk and hear some of his background and some of the things he's teaching to his students. So,
Cool.
welcome aboard, Jim.
Hey, well, thank you, Jim Dodmead, for inviting me to speak before you guys. It's always fun to talk about yourself, if you know what I mean. And the one thing I always try to make clear is why you all might like to listen to what I have to say. And the reason I even bring this up is because I don't have the traditional credibility that other, motorcycle gurus have. I don't have racetrack experience. I don't have any trophies. I've never taught for Motorcycle Safety Foundation, nothing. I did come into motorcycling late. I came in my 40s, and I had an interesting background that segued into motorcycling super well. And that is, back when I was a younger man in my early 30s, I went and earned a pilot's license. And so my thing back in those days, in my 30s, was flying. In those days, I was in the life insurance business. I had been in the business for about 15 years and was doing pretty well, so that I could afford a membership at a local flying club called the Inn Flying Club in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And I was an officer in that club for a year and organized a lot of flying. We had this thing called the spot landing contest, which meant that you come around the pattern and you land on a tarp. The idea is to put your wheels down on this tarp that was secured to the pavement. And I won the spot landing contest a couple of years. So I was really into flying. I was really into VFR flying. Mm-hmm. VFR flying is visual flight rules. And then as my flying career progressed, I went on from VFR flying. I went to instrument school and I earned an instrument certificate. And I remember the first suggestion my flight instructor had after I earned the certificate was on my first available instrument flying day: go fly. And his point was, having an instructor in the cockpit for instructional purposes is also a crutch. And to develop the confidence of an instrument pilot, that pilot's got to go into the real stuff, go into the clouds, and develop your confidence in instrument flight conditions. And I gravitated to it. I really got a lot of satisfaction from it. When my mother died, there was an inheritance. And so rather than, be a good boy and put the inheritance into my retirement plan, I went out and I bought a 1978 Grumman Tiger and retrofitted it for instrument flying. And with that, I had the airplane for 8 years, and I accomplished all the flying that I could possibly do. I set high standards for myself and learned to develop my flying techniques in instrument conditions with a very high level of proficiency. And I capped off my flying career with a very technical instrument flight where it was a nighttime flight in full IMC, which is instrument meteorological conditions or hard instruments, all in the clouds, flying at night to a small airport in the mountains where there is no ambient light. It's just all totally black. And accomplished that flight with a level of ease, with a level of can-do. And I just was very aware that I have now accomplished everything I wanted to do in flying, and it was time to move on to other endeavors. Well, in the background, I had been, as I say, motorcycling, beginning really in my 40th year. And I found that instrument flying is very deep. It's a very deep skill. It takes a lot of training. And with all of that training, I developed this heightened sensitivity to the airplane that I didn't have during VFR flying. And it was required that I have a super high level of precision. And to develop that high level of precision, I had to be thinking ahead of the airplane all the time. I had to develop a high level of anticipation to fly with a high level of precision so that my mind was always ahead of the airplane, never getting behind the airplane. Then you have problems, and those problems can compound. And if you're in hard instruments, then you can crash. So it's very serious stuff. Flying with anticipation, flying with precision was very serious stuff. Otherwise, you can have serious problems. And from that precision, I got this thing about lines, and that in every sport, there's often lines. Certainly flying from navigational fix to navigational fix, you fly a course line. But when Tom Brady throws a football, he throws a very precise trajectory. When Tiger Woods hits that golf ball, it's a very precise trajectory. Motorcycling also has very precise lines. And have you guys been to the racetrack? Have you had your track days? I guess I don't have to. Yeah, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. But it's very important that all of you go to the track. Now, I've been to the track more than 15 times, and I've never been 100 miles an hour. When I go to the racetrack, I'm not interested in going fast. I'm interested in carving precise lines. I'm interested in exploring my fear of steep lean angles. Okay? Well, as I was doing all this instrument flying, I'm motorcycling as well. Motorcycling is always in the background. Oftentimes I would ride the motorcycle to the airport. And it just kind of came on to me that learning to ride a motorcycle at a high level has a lot to do with lines. So when you're at the racetrack, the first thing an instructor will do for you, or you really must do, is go out onto the racetrack behind an instructor, and he's going to demonstrate the racing line around that track. And the racing line around the track is really the fastest path around the track. And the more you dedicate yourself to sharpening your line around that track, the faster you go. Okay. Well, as I'm riding my area, which is the Appalachian and Blue Ridge Mountains, it became clear that there's also a mountain line. The mountain line is all about safety. And so when we think about mountain riding, I want you to think of it in terms of it being a genre of motorcycling. There's all kinds of genres in motorcycling. I bet a lot of you guys like to tour. You like to go for weeks at a time. That's a genre, and you develop skill sets within that genre. Track days, going to the racetrack, that's a genre. You're learning racing skills, how to ride super fast. Commuting, that's a genre. Trials riding, that's also a genre. And in the last 10 or 15 years, another genre has come on the scene big time, and that's adventure riding, going off pavement and riding trails and gravel roads and things like that. Well, I looked at mountains as a genre, riding mountains. And so my workshops are really a two-day event where we get together and I share with you the skills that I've learned while riding the Blue Ridge and Appalachian Mountains that have kept me as proficient and safe a rider as I am. And I think I'm a unique person to do this because of the unique experience I have. I probably have more mountain riding experience in the Appalachians than anybody else on the East Coast. And I don't mean to blow my horn, but it really seems to be true because I've not met anybody else with, I've got almost 600,000 miles of pure mountain riding experience in that I rarely ride west of the Ohio River. So that's just a lot of riding. I have a talent. I know I have it, and I have been exercising it really since I began to ride, which was 25 years ago. And that is kind of like a musician has a certain ear for pitch and for sound. I have a talent for memorizing roads and terrain. I have practically a photographic memory for terrain. So in the early years of motorcycling, I was frickin' unstoppable. My first year, I rode 26,000 miles, all in the mountains, all processing and remembering and cataloging all these mountain roads. Now, the Appalachians they're very different than any other mountain ranges in the world, because the Appalachians, according to several geologists that have been on my workshop, these are the oldest mountains in the world. They're like, used to be as big as the Himalaya or the Andes, but now they're like molars. They're beaten down and old. And they've been around a long time, and they've had a lot of, because it's a temperate zone, at one time there was a lot of wildlife in the Appalachians, forest beasts that are now extinct. But crisscrossing the Appalachians are all these game trails where ancient animals like forest buffalo would travel from one region to another on these ancient game trails. Well, a lot of those game trails became, footpaths and river walks for ancient people, native peoples. And, time goes on, and a lot of these river walks and pathways were graveled under for wagon trains and ox carts back when the early settlers were pushing west. And now, as luck would have it, many of these ancient game trails have been paved over for automobile traffic, and as luck would have it, are motorcycles. So all throughout the Appalachians are these interesting, well, I call them invisible roads. The roads that you don't know are there unless you know they're there. They're buried. But what's pretty cool is that in West Virginia, North Carolina, the state government puts a lot of locals to work reconditioning these roads. So they're all super good pavement, super smooth, nicely kept up, no potholes. It's quality. And because the Appalachians are in the south, they don't get harsh winters, so you don't get a lot of gravel and salt and nastiness on these roads. So they're really nice roads for this genre of mountain riding. And so over my 2-day workshop, if somebody wants to have training, it is a workshop dedicated to training. And I basically do for you what my flight instructor did for me. My flight instructor put me on the line, okay, a navigational line from point A to point B, and I had to hold that line with a great deal of anticipation and precision. So when I train mountain riders, I put you on the mountain line. First, it helps if you read my book because everything's described in the book. And not to plug the book too much, but it was written up in Motorcycle Consumer News. The guy said it was every bit as good as Dave Huff's book, Proficient Motorcycling. I believe it is. That was my standard to shoot for. I've been written up in BMW Magazine like 6 times, the New York Times. It's a good book. But this mountain line, similar to a racetrack. On the racetrack, the mountain line is for high speed. In the mountains, the mountain line is all about safety. It's all about achieving an extremely high level of safety as you ride. And I'll just give you a couple of thoughts here. If you never take my workshop, that's fine. But the ideal I'll give you, if you want to change your riding for the better, discipline yourself so that around every curve, around every hill crest, left curves, right curves, tight curves, open curves, over every hill crest, every blind crest, you want to catch the vanishing point. Now, the vanishing point is where the road's going to immediately next. When you cross over a hill crest, the vanishing point's going to fly out at the speed of light, and you're going to catch it with your eye. And you're going to acknowledge the vanishing point. And if you do that, it's going to give you the most time and the most distance to process everything you need to process in that section of road. It's going to enable you to anticipate what's coming next, so long as you create the discipline of catching the vanishing point with your eye first. Okay, so that's one idea. If you do just that, your riding is going to change for the better. Another skill is that when you're talking about going around curves, all the instructors, they always talk about how to lean into the curve, how to tilt your shoulders into the curve, or how to bring your chin down towards the motorcycle mirrors. And all of that training comes from racetrack experience, where the idea is to lean into the curve so that your motorcycle doesn't have to lean as much, so that your motorcycle can stay more upright, so that you have more traction on the pavement on the racetrack to go at a higher speed. Mountain riding has nothing to do with speed. It has to do with safety, and it has to do with confidence. The great mountain riders, the great motorcyclists, have a tremendous amount of confidence that they can handle any kind of curve or any kind of motorcycling condition that's thrown at them. As you ride and you are going around a curve, don't lean into the curve as much as you simply lean forward. You want your elbows to be at a minimum of a 90-degree angle as you go through a curve. And if you do that, you will experience a bump in confidence. Don't ask me why the confidence increases. I don't know why. But there's a kind of an existential thing that happens, and you develop more of a can-do attitude towards handling yourself in that curve when and if you lean forward. So I would say that if you take those two skills, simple, 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 acknowledge the vanishing point and lean forward, those two skills will help you as you train yourself to develop yourself to become as good a rider as you want to become. Okay, that's training. If you want to come and train with me, we use Bluetooth communication. I go in groups no bigger than 4, including myself. So it's me and 3 students. That way it's personal. I can get into your heads a little bit, and I can really work with you on developing your skills as a mountain rider, if that's what you'd like to do. Okay. Something else I do is tours. I consider myself a master Appalachian Blue Ridge mountain guide. And so I put these tours together, or I have guys like you all. How many of you know each other? How many of you have shaken each other's hands? Is that something that goes on in your group, or you basically see each other on computers once a month?
Mix.
We're all
I see-
over the country, Jim.
Yes.
And
from all over
we're
the
both in the
country.
United States and Canada, all over the place.
Yeah.
But a lot of us have ridden together a couple times a year. So I think I know, personally, there's only 2 people on the screen that I have not met personally here. So,
Cool. Okay.
but there's a lot of us in various.
Here.
Well, we've ridden together all over the place quite a bit. A lot of us have.
Most outstanding. So my point is that my friend from Bel Air was saying that his favorite road is going down the Blue Ridge Parkway. And the Blue Ridge Parkway is great. The Blue Ridge Parkway is a main throughway through a gigantic body of land. The Blue Ridge Parkway is it's like a vein or an artery going through a gigantic body of land. I ride the capillary roads. Got me?
Mhm.
The capillary roads are the invisible roads. The capillary roads are these former game trails that are far more interesting than the Blue Ridge Parkway. As much as I love the Blue Ridge Parkway, I ride it every single year. I've ridden the Blue Ridge Parkway from top to bottom, bottom to top, nonstop in a day. I love it. But the more interesting roads are these invisible roads. Why? Because they have mile upon mile upon mile of 2nd, 3rd, and 4th gears. You don't get into 5th and 6th. You're setting yourself up for one curve after another. You get a little bit of a break, then you go into the next series of curves. And it's compelling stuff. If what you do is you love to ride, you like to motorcycle the motorcycle. To me, that's where the action is. And that's why I've never really ridden out west, because while out west has the big time panoramic scenery, you're usually seeing the scenery, it's 5 or 6 miles away. And you're spinning 5th and 6th gear to see it. Then you might get a mountain pass, and you go over the mountain pass, and that's fine, but then you've got 50 more miles of straight and level to get to the next series of curves. The Blue Ridge and Appalachians don't have that, and they don't have the panoramic scenery and the John Ford vistas and what have you. It's more intimate. It's smaller. It's very verdant. It's very green. It's very lush. These are tighter roads. And so I do these tours. And what I was suggesting that you guys might like to do, I do tours in groups of 5 or 6. I charge you guys $100 a day for 5 days. And for that, I show you a great ride. Probably one of the best rides you'll ever have in your life. If what you do is you like to take curves and you like to take them at adult speeds, not being a jerk going, macho fast. Nothing like that. just smooth and easy, taking in the scenery and me showing you the history. I know all the history of a specific area on the Blue Ridge called the Blue Ridge Plateau. I've been going there for 25 years. I've got a little place there in the summer. I work my workshops from Floyd, Virginia. And I take people from my base of operations, which is again in Floyd, Virginia, to Asheville. So we ride to Asheville, and then we do 2 days around Asheville, and then ride back to Floyd. Now, when we go to Greater Asheville, we don't touch Deals Gap and we don't touch the Cherahalla Skyway. Everybody's there. Instead, you stay on the little quiet, invisible roads. Nobody's there. That's one of the advantages of the invisible roads. There's no traffic or very, very little traffic. Depending on the weather might suck in Asheville. If that's the case, then we ride to Southeast Ohio. Now, I don't know how many of you have ridden the curves in Southeast Ohio, but in my opinion, they are the most technical curves in the United States, period. And I do 2 days in Southeast Ohio. And it's just, you know, if you like to ride curves, and you like really, the curvier the road, the more interesting the scenery. That's been my experience. And so if the roads are really curvy, it's just amazing, the eye candy that you see along the way. So I get groups together of 5 or 6. I charge each of you $100 a day. I know where all the cool restaurants are, where there's value. I'm not interested in spending big bucks. I want value for the money. An interesting place. The burgers are like $4.75, but they're delicious. Really cool hotels. We go to Marietta, Ohio, stay at the Lafayette Hotel. Totally cool place. So I do tours and I do my workshops. The workshops, I may have mentioned, they're $600 for 2 days. We use Bluetooth communication, super clear. And I teach you the title of my book, The Art of Riding Smooth. And that's what you want to become. You want to become smooth. And being smooth is continuously being precise. It's continuous precision. In order to develop continuous precision, you have to be anticipating all the time. And so I help you with these skills. I don't know how long I've spoken. If you take my training course, you must realize, and I'm looking at all you guys, you all have gray hair. Okay? It's not easy getting training at our age. I'm almost 70. In order to get better, we have to change. And change isn't easy. It's not. And so what I require my students to do is to learn and commit a mantra to memory. You have to commit it to memory, and in my course, you have to recite it. Now there's no BS. If you can recite it cold, you've changed. You've become more. You've put something in your mind. The mantra is a blueprint for the mountain line. It's a blueprint. If you learn the mantra, you have the mountain line in your head. And instead of having to think about it as you ride, when you don't have enough time to think about it because you're motorcycling a motorcycle, instead the words will percolate naturally in your mind. And you'll have what you need to do right in front of you, right there. So just do the mantra. And if you do that, you are going to start the climb from the plateau of ability that you're on now to where you want to get to. And so you kind of go through this thing of being unconsciously, well, you're consciously competent. That's where most of you guys are right now. You are consciously competent of motorcycling, but you're conscious of it. You're aware of it. You have to do the skills. The idea is to get the right skills in your head and then work towards become unconsciously competent, where you just have it. And you begin with developing an unconscious competency in knowing the mantra. That came from flying. Knowing a mantra comes right out of instrument flying. We were required to memorize a mantra. So when the going got tough in the air, you've got to change altitudes, and you've got to change course headings, and you've got to change power settings, and you've got to be talking to air traffic controllers, and you better keep your line as sharp as you can be because you're in instrument conditions. It's a lot of stuff that comes in your head, but you've got the mantra down. So just keep reciting the mantra, and you can stay in your head and be cool and get the job done. It's the same thing in my course. In my book, I explain the mantra. Every word of the mantra is 21 words long. Every word is cherry-picked. And so I riff on each of the words in the mantra. And so kind of in summary, my experience, the writer's workshop, is not for everybody. It's for the guys that they love to ride. That's it. They love to ride, and with life, you know, we understand that the better you get at something, the more you love it, and the more you love it, the more you do it, and the more you do it, the better you get. The more you love it, the more you do it, the more you do it, the better you get. And you start spiraling upwards into higher realms of mastery towards unconscious competence. And so that's what I teach in my workshop.
Jim, can you take, oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll take questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Because we've got Dirk to speak as well.
I assume one of the things that you really dwell on is not to put your brakes on coming out of a corner.
Yeah. That's something I do focus on. Ideally, is your name Tom?
Correct.
Ideally, you want to minimize use of brakes entirely. Now, that's not to say you don't use your brakes, and it's not a thing of being macho, but developing brakeless braking requires a heightened level of anticipation.
Plan ahead.
Plan ahead in your mind. Yes. So that is something I talk about. Absolutely. Brakeless braking. Sure.
Anybody else have any questions?
I don't have a question. I do have a couple of comments. One is I really like the vanishing point because you can use that to gauge whether it's time to speed up or slow down depending on how far away that vanishing point is, right? So I really like that concept in the book.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other thing is John's doing a ride on the Windy Nine this summer. And in Jim's book, there's a route up in West Virginia. And someday, if I live to retirement, I'm going to try and set up a group ride using his route here. So,
yeah. In my book, I have a route. It's called the Magical Mountains Tour. And it's 2,000 miles long. And so what I've done is I've chronicled the very best roads I know in the Appalachians, and I've stitched them together into this ride. And it's available on my website, writersworkshop.com. You go over to the right side, there's a link to get the route itself that you can download into a Garmin GPS. And a lot of people have bought it. A lot of people have taken it over the past 2 years, and they say it's just one of the most wonderful rides they've ever been on. which it is. Anybody else?
I've got a bunch of routes that are also that Linda put up on our website from a bunch of guys that I've been riding with for over a decade out in out in the Smoky Mountains. So, you know, Blue Ridge is part of it, Chirahola, Foothills. Of course, sometimes you have to run deals until, of course, they've got that that route opened up again. That's the back roads way to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great area. They've had a lot of rain, and so a lot of the roads have been washed out. You familiar with Wayne Bush?
No, can't say I am.
He's very good. He's a cartographer. So he's put together these really detailed maps of Greater Asheville.
Okay.
So a map might be the northwestern segment, the north segment, the northeast segment. There's about 8 maps for Greater Asheville.
Mm-hmm.
They're small, so you can whip it out at the intersection on your motorcycle, check out the roads in that vicinity, and it's just a very easy map to use, and you're rewarded with roads you would never find otherwise.
What was his name again, Jim?
Yeah, Wayne Bush, and his website is America Rides Maps.
We might try and get him in for a program later on too.
Absolutely, he would be very good. He'd be very good. Another one you might want to have speak with you is Eric Trow of Staying Safe. He would be happy to give a presentation, I'm sure. So,
Jim, you don't happen to know Doug Steyer, do you? He's an avid rider out, and he's one of kind of the guys who leads us on our routes when we go out there, finds new roads for us, get up on the Kentucky side once in a while, and so on.
cool. Yeah, I'm sure he's very good.
You know, one of the joys of having gray hair and motorcycling well is you get to some place where, you know, you've passed by a bunch of young guys on squid bikes, and you pull your helmet off, and they pull up a few minutes later and say, "I got passed by an old guy." So
For sure.
enjoy those moments.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, guys, Jim, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're going to let Dirk speak a little bit too. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
And stick around because you get to listen to the next one too.
I intend to. Sure.
So I'm going to introduce Dirk Weisiger. I think I spelled that. Dirk's an adventure. What's that?
That's all right. Go ahead.
Close enough. Dirk's an adventurer, author, and storyteller. His stories will captivate and rope you in as he jumps through loops to share his message of no fear, do it anyway, and leave tomorrow. Dirk is a solo traveler who loves to leave without a map, without reservations, and challenges himself to live his life like the hero in his own movie. He's ridden his motorcycle from the top of North America to the tip of South America, hiked to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, and traveled to 5 continents. Throughout all his travels, he's learned how to face fear, overcome obstacles, and guides us to do the same. Welcome the visionary to the stage, Dirk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint here. And here we go. So, do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Right. How many of you have a bucket list? You know, a someday list. When life is perfect and everything gets done, I want to do that list. Maybe it's a favorite ride. What I want to do is show you a way to realize that while facing your fears and doing it anyway. About 5 years ago, I read a book by Jim Rogers. Jim wrote a book called Investment Biker, where he quit his job on Wall Street and rode his BMW GS 1200 around the world. And I was impressed. And it impressed me to ride a motorcycle to the bottom of the world, Tierra del Fuego, the tip of Argentina. I only had 2 problems. One, not only had I never owned a motorcycle. I had never ridden a motorcycle. And 2, I had a job, you know, one of those things, obligations, responsibilities. I couldn't quit, or could I? And so I did what any sane person would do when faced with their dream. I quit my job and bought a motorcycle. I got a GS 1200 BMW like Jim's, but after a year I was no closer to Tierra del Fuego. So I wrote Jim an email. I said, Jim, you inspired me to go to the bottom of the world, but I'm having trouble getting started. Do you have any words of wisdom? And I thought he'd send me routes, types of motorcycles, but no, he sent one sentence. He said, do it, leave tomorrow. You see, my problem was the same problem a lot of us have when we're faced with our dream, and that is fear. And fear will paralyze us from living the life we want. So how do we face fear and do it anyway? The t-shirt company was right. No fear. They just spelt it wrong. You've got to know fear and do it anyway. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to set a date. I set a date of December 26th, 2015. Come hell or high water, sink or swim, I was leaving for Tierra del Fuego. So many times we procrastinate, we put off our goals. I'm not ready, I'm not educated, I haven't researched it. I don't have any money, no time. We become super creative at creating excuses. So you've got to set a date. No matter what you do, you've got to set a date and then stick to that date or you'll never do it. I want you to think with me a ride that you've always wanted to do that lasts over 2 or 3 days. And I want you to write that down. I want you to think of a fear that you associate with that dream ride. And I want you to think about an obstacle. My fear was I didn't know how to ride a motorcycle. And my obstacle was if I had a wreck, I would have to fly back home and not realize Tierra del Fuego. And I want you to put today's date. I want to help you to formulate a goal. And the second thing you've got to do is you've got to find a mentor or a coach, someone that's been there, done that. Someone like Jim, where you can take his course and learn to be a better rider and to meet your goal. My mentor was a guy by the name of J.D. Dias, and J.D. had ridden Mexico for 25 years. And he knew it like the back of his hand, and he could fix that motorcycle on the side of the road. And I thought, I want to be that guy. So I asked JD if I could tag along, and he said, sure. Well, it didn't take long, and JD figured out I didn't know what I was doing. And he taught me to ride the BMW. And we hopscotched through Mexico from Monterrey to San Miguel to Pyramid of the Sun down to Oaxaca, Mexico. And at Oaxaca, he said, you know, I've got to go back to Austin to go to work. He said, Dirk, you've come a long way, but it's a long way to Tierra del Fuego. And there's no shame in going back to Austin with me. Well, folks, that's code for dude, you're way over your skis. And I was. How many times do we hear you're not ready? And sometimes it's our own voice telling us the same excuses over and over. And I was hearing those voices. Do you know the language? Can you fix a motorcycle? Do you even have a GPS? And I had to admit, I didn't know any of that. But what I did know is, do you believe in yourself enough to figure it out? And that is the key thing with all of this. If you find a mentor like Jim told us earlier, about how to ride the mountains. Find a mentor to help you become a better rider to meet your goal. So I thanked JD and I said, you know, you've taught me a lot, but I signed up for Tierra del Fuego, not Oaxaca, Mexico. And I headed south. And when I got to Guatemala, it was the Wild West. Complete at the border, the money changer had 2 pearl handle 6-shooters, and he wasn't afraid to use them. And so every afternoon I would knock off about 3 and I would find a hotel with secure parking. And this particular night I stayed in this hotel, and around midnight, the gunfire started. And I looked out in the parking lot and all the cars were gone except the Iron Horse, my motorcycle. About 3 a.m., the gunfire stopped and I crawled out from under the bed. I'm no hero. I wasn't packing heat. The next morning I went down and I asked Luis at the front desk, I said, what's the gunfire? He said, people no like government. And so I said, were you here last night? He said, I no stay here at night. I said, was anybody here? He said, not during the gunfight. And I said, well, I was here. I could have been killed. And he said, oh, but Gringo, he's smart. So I guess he thought I was going to make it anyway. But my point is, you have to have a mentor or guide. I had a guide that took me up Kilimanjaro, and it was brutal, the last 1,000 feet. But I would put my footstep in his footstep as we trudged to the top of Kilimanjaro. And you need a coach, you need a mentor to learn to ride your dream ride. And I want you to write down someone you know that could help you to become a better rider. Well, I made it through Central America and into South America and a war in Colombia. I found that I was in Cartagena, Colombia, and they said, don't go any further. It's too dangerous. They're killing policemen, burning buses. They're blowing up bridges. And I was so discouraged. Every time I turned around, there was an obstacle. You know, we're on our dream ride, and what do we do when we're faced with obstacles? How do we overcome roadblocks? And I overcame a roadblock when I went through Bogota, I went through Medellin. I would be stopped by the police, and they would want a picture with the motorcycle. And I would give them $30 from my fake wallet, and they would usually let me through. But I got south of Cali, and the road stopped. Nobody was going anywhere. The military was there. The police were there. They were protesting on a bridge. People were lined up for miles, visiting, drinking water, buying food. And I thought this could last for days. And so I eased my motorcycle into the crowd, and the crowd parted. And they let me through. I couldn't believe it. I would wave and they would applaud. It was like I was leading a revolution. I thought, this is great. And shortly after my ride, they came to peace. And Cuba brokered a peace. And today, Colombia is at peace. And once you get beyond Colombia, Ecuador is a beautiful country. It gets safer and safer as you go further south into South America. Bolivia is the toughest country. They don't like U.S. citizens. And I couldn't buy gas. I had to follow an Englishman through, and he would buy gas, and I would pay him, and he would show his passport. Until one day we got gas, and they asked for my passport, and I showed them my Texas driver's license, and convinced her that Texas was a country in Colombia. And don't ask why she believed that, but she wrote down Texas, Colombia, and I bought gas. It was the most amazing thing. But Bolivia was a beautiful country, a land frozen in time. The people were beautiful, and I highly recommend Bolivia. And so I got through into Chile. Chile is about 4 blocks wide and 7,000 miles long. And the first part of it is pavement, and then the last 3,000 miles is gravel. It was a beautiful ride. Riding gravel is, it kind of grows on you. You learn it as you ride it. This was a typical road, and it rained. It was 40 degrees, so I decided to take a shortcut over the Andes Mountains into Argentina. And the road went straight up into the Andes, and I dropped the bike. The road turned into a single track, and I dropped the bike. I was going too slow, Jim, for you riders. And I dropped it as about 700 pounds loaded down. I was pinned underneath it. The wheels were pointed up. And I thought maybe solo riding wasn't such a good idea after all. When these 4 hikers hiked up, these 2 guys right here helped me get the bike up. And one of them said, "What are you doing out here?" And I said I was headed for Tierra del Fuego. They asked if I had read the sign back there. It said Sierra Carata, which means road closed. I thought it was a salad. And so we had a good laugh over that. And I made it into Argentina, which was a beautiful country. The winds were brutal. Here, these 3 riders just laid down their bikes. They weren't going any further until the wind died down. It would get up to 50 miles an hour. And it was the last roadblock as I would drop my bike and pick it up, and the wind was brutal. But I finally made it to Tierra del Fuego. And what I've got to tell you that I learned was overcoming obstacles is like a puzzle to solve. And some people see it as a threat, an opportunity to quit, and others see it as an opportunity for growth. And it's how you view those obstacles which will determine how you react. And so much time on riding solo is reacting to obstacles that we face. And so I finally made it to Ushuaia, and it was a defining moment as I look back on my journey. And I'd learned that overcoming obstacles builds character, character conquers fear, and fear causes us to quit. And I watched as hundreds of tourists flew to Ushuaia to take a picture here by a sign that says the bottom of the world. And I thought about that, all the lessons learned. I went 18,000 miles, 12 countries. It took me 14 months. I went pretty slow because I stayed places, and I'm a writer, so I wrote a book, and I didn't want to be in a hurry, and I wanted to enjoy each country. This is the book that I wrote. It's called Leave Tomorrow, and it really talks about living your dream, living your movie. We all have a movie in us, and we all have a ride that we'd like to do. And I met a lady in Cartagena, Colombia by the name of Daisy. She was from Portland, Oregon, and she was riding her 650 BMW to Ushuaia for the second time. And she was a 70-year-old grandmother. And I thought, if Daisy can do it, I can make it. And that's my message to you tonight, that you have a dream, you have a goal, and you have an opportunity to ride your dream. I just got back from Thailand, and I've got 2 adventures coming this year. One is to Ireland in September. The other one is to Costa Rica in November, and we ride with no plan. I have a basic outline of where to go. We fly in, we rent the bikes, and we take off. And if you're interested in either one of those, you can reach me at dirkwisger.com, and you can reach me by my email or my phone number. And I just want to encourage each of you to live your movie and ride your journey. So I want to open up to any questions you might have. And the time we have, I think we want to get done by 7 o'clock, or my time. So is there any questions?
On your trip, did you speak Spanish?
No, I learned words along the way, but I still don't know Spanish fluently. But I knew enough words, and there's enough people that know English. It never really was an issue. So yeah, you don't need to know the language. You really just have to have the courage to throw a leg and figure it out. And I became a good rider through the process. Any other questions?
How did you get back?
I rode back 3,000 miles from Ushuaia to Buenos Aires, and then I flew the motorcycle and me back to Houston. And so I went all the way down, and I was worn out, and I was ready for a break. And the next summer I rode to Alaska. And I just got back from Thailand, where I rode Thailand. If you ever get a chance, northern Thailand from Chiang Mai, it's a wonderful ride. The roads are great. It's 1,800 kilometers twisties, and it's just an awesome ride. It sounds like the Appalachians. I haven't ridden the Appalachians, but now after hearing Jim, I want to go there. So,
Calvin, do you have any words of wisdom about finances and how you pay for trips like this?
Well, it cost me about $3,000 a month, and I was gone for 14 months. I stayed in $30 hotels along the way, and the big expenses, hotels and food and gas. I had my BMW checked out at major BMW shops along the way, and I never had a breakdown, which I can't believe it. And another thing, I never had a flat. I could not believe it. All the gravel, and I got back to Texas, I had a flat. So I was very fortunate. But
When you go into countries and rent bikes, does that increase your monthly cost?
No, every country, you've got to check out of one country into the other, and it's a very minimal cost. I would say the most costly was Bolivia, where I had to get they charged me $300 for a visa, and they interrogated me at the border. But other than that, I now have a 10-year visa, so there really wasn't a big cost. Some of them you have to buy insurance, like Mexico, but most of them you don't even do that. If you have your title and your passport and everything's up to date, it's just, it's a kind of a formality. They stamp you and you're on your way. So it wasn't that big of a deal.
What I meant was
What's that?
What was the name of that southernmost town you went to, and how do you spell it?
It's Ushuaia. It's USUHIA. If you start spelling it, it should come up. It's Ushuaia, Argentina, and you've got to go in and out of Argentina and Chile, back and forth. I don't know why they bother. I suggested they merge and call it Chile-tina, but nobody liked that. If you know South America, they do not like each other. But both were very nice to me. I was so impressed how they treat us as Americans very well. They look up to us. And as a writer, and you probably know this, Jim, traveling, and most of the rest of you, if you've ever been out of the country, they treat you like royalty. They look up to us. They literally do. Now, there are bad people, but they're the minority. They really are. And I was impressed how people wanted to help. And they were so impressed that I would be riding through their country, especially Central America, where nobody goes. And I never felt threatened. Of course, I didn't ride at night, and I didn't go to places I shouldn't go, and I found secure parking and secure hotels. And I had some times, like when I dropped the bike in the middle of nowhere, I should have taken your course because I was going too slow. And I think if I had another shot at it, I would have made it. But overall, there was always somebody that came out of nowhere to help me along the way. And so it was, if Daisy can do it, I can do it. And anybody here can make that trip. If you have the time and the money to do it, I highly recommend it.
When you fly into a country and rent a bike, what is the average of what you have to pay for the bike?
That's a great question. I flew into Bangkok and took a plane to Chiang Mai, and there's tons of places to rent. And it was $50 a day for a Honda 400 street bike. And I'm going to be flying into Costa Rica, and a BMW is $200 a day. A Honda or something equivalent, a 400, something like that, is $55 a day. And so you can, it's a wide range, but I like the $55 to $50 range bike. Now, if you're going to be somewhere over 30 days, it's cheaper to ship your bike and ride your own motorcycle. But if you're going to be under 30 days, then I think 1 or 2 weeks is enough to ride. And if you're going to do that, it's usually cheaper to rent a motorcycle than to take your own bike. If you're over 30 days, you could buy a used motorcycle and then sell it at the end of your trip. But that's what I've run into.
Like a great experience, no doubt.
Oh, it was
great.
Yeah, you would love it. And it was the greatest thing I'd ever done other than having 2 children. It was the highlight of my life. If I never have the opportunity to ride another day, it exceeded all of my expectations. And my whole thing, I was just made a BMW expert, which is 1 notch below ambassador. I'm really proud of that for a guy who 5 years ago had never ridden a motorcycle. I speak at a lot of BMW dealers around the United States, and they help reimburse my speaking fee. And I haven't ridden like you guys have, but I've ridden a Honda and I've ridden the BMW, and both were very quality bikes. And so,
where did you leave from on your trip? Where did you start?
Okay, I'm from Austin, Texas.
And how long did it take you to get down there?
It took 14 months, and I could have made it, if I went straight through, I could have made it in 4 months. But I retired, and I wasn't in a hurry. I didn't have a plan, like I didn't know how long it would take. And so I stayed a month in Colombia. I stayed a month, almost 2 months in Peru. Peru is such riding the Andes Mountains is just unbelievable. I mean, you could take 3 months just riding Peru. So yeah, I left from Austin.
It sounds like that
Yeah, he's
climb
got a new
Mount
bucket list.
Kilimanjaro was something else.
Oh,
Wheels are
Kilimanjaro.
turning right now. I'm wondering if I'd still be married when I got back.
Yeah. Well, I'm single, and I enjoyed Colombia. It was a wonderful country. But before I rode motorcycles, I've hiked all over the world, and Kilimanjaro was the biggest mountain I've hiked. And it took a week, and it was a brutal hike, but it was so worth it. And when I found motorcycling, I still hike. I did 2 treks in Peru when I was there that were 10 days each. That was one reason I was there so long, that I would hike. I hiked a glacier, and I would go as far as I could on the motorcycle, and then I would put it in storage, and then I would hike. So it was kind of hiking and motorcycling all the way to Ushuaia.
In addition to writing, you probably could publish an entire book of photos.
Well, I do. I have a lot of photographs in my book and on my website, and I had an idea. I did some black and white stuff, and I took all my photos on my cell phone, and it's amazing how good stuff you can get on your phone.
Any other questions for Dirk?
My book is on Amazon in Kindle or paperback. And if you would like a copy, if you'd like to reach me, you can reach me on my website, dirkwisiger.com. And I'd be glad to help you live your movie. And if you're interested in a trip or two, let me know.
What's your book titled again?
Leave Tomorrow.
Leave Tomorrow.
Leave Tomorrow, and it's on Amazon, so you can go there and get a copy. It's $15, I think. Paperback and Kindle is $10, I believe. It'll be the second best book you'll read this year, behind The Art of Writing Smooth.
That's good. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Hey, Dirk, how did you get into Colombia from Panama? There's no roads.
You have to ship your bike around the Darien Strait, and
Okay.
so you get to Panama City, and you can fly your bike to Bogota, or you can go to Colón, which is the port, and you can put it on a ferry, and they ship it around to Cartagena. So I shipped it around to Cartagena, and then I flew through Venezuela and got to Cartagena, and then I picked up my bike. It took about 2 weeks. It's cheaper to ship it than it is to fly it, but it's quicker to fly it than it is to ship it. But that's how you get around the Darien Strait.
Cool. Thanks, Dirk. That was good.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And it was a pleasure listening to Jim, and hopefully someday our paths can cross, as well as everybody here. Just a great meeting, and thank you very much.
You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Hey,
great.
Jerry, would you like to lead everybody in the four-way test?
Sure. What's that?
Me?
That's what you get for being gone so long.
Hey, I did it last time.
Did you? Yeah, it's
I
good
did.
for you. Good practice.
I get them confused. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
Is
is
it
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all
Fair to all
concerned?
concerned,
Will
third,
it build goodwill
will
and
build goodwill and better friendship.
and fourth, is a
Will be
beneficial.
beneficial.
To all concerned.
And for our club, fifth.
Is it fun?
Fun.
Fun.
And for Jerry, will anybody find out?
Will anybody fun?
Appreciate both speakers tonight. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Right.
See you guys.
See y'all next week.
Bye now. God, Rory split before I could ask him to go on that ride to South America.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Email me.
I said Rory split. Rory and I went to, Judy, we went to Alaska last year.
Oh, awesome.
We went, we took 2 weeks getting up there and screwing around, and then we spent an extra 3 weeks coming back home. So when I got back home, my wife said 5 weeks is too much.
Yeah. Well, Alaska is a beautiful country, and I loved it, and I want to go back.
We live over in Michigan, and we went across northern United States over to through Trail of the Sun there in Glacier.
Yeah.
Then we went up the west side through Jasper, and then we weaved back and forth all the way up to the Canadian Rockies up there. That to me was the most beautiful area. That's part there. Alaska's cool, but the stuff in the Canadian Rockies was pretty amazing to me.
Oh yes, British Columbia is one of my favorite places to ride and also to hike. And I am in love with British Columbia, but I haven't been to the eastern part of Canada, and I really want to go. I'm going to be in Tennessee in June at the BMW International, and
There's
I want to
a lot of good riding between Tennessee, Kentucky, with Virginia. That whole area is an amazing amount of riding. I've ridden a lot of those same trails there. Really, really nice.
Yeah.
And have you been to the highest paid point in North America? Might be the highest paid point in the world. I'm not sure, Tom. Is it?
Where is that?
I stopped on the way. Well, we took the short way back from Alaska to Michigan. We went through Colorado. We went down South Tom in Colorado, and he took us up to which peak is that, Mount?
The top of Mount Evans, the tallest, highest paved road in North America.
Yes, I don't think I've been there, but I've heard about Mount Evans. Where is that? Is that in Colorado, right?
That would be west of Denver and east of Glenwood Springs.
Yes. No, I haven't. I've been to Glenwood.
The fun thing about that is it's a national park now, and they won't allow any improvements over what was done when it became a national park. So it's a skinny, nearly unmaintained 2-lane road with no guardrails.
It reminds you of South America.
And y'all went up it, huh?
And down.
It's a nice ride up there, and it's beautiful up there. At the very end of the road is a huge rotary symbol.
Now what do you ride? What do you ride?
I ride a Goldwing.
Okay, and so it made it fine, huh?
A Goldwing's quite a hell of a ride. I'll tell you that. It's the speed record on the Trail of the Dragon is by a Goldwing. Some guy in his late 60s has it.
Oh, Goldwing's a good. You could go all the way to South America on a Goldwing. You can get all the way to Ushuaia on pavement.
I'd be a little worried about the Honda Tupperware falling off in that.
Yeah, you don't want to go the shortcut.
I think if I was going to make that trip, I'd buy the bike you have or something similar.
Yeah, the 1200's a little heavy, loaded down when you get off road, and unless you're a very good rider, and I'm not at the level that bike is on off-road single track. If I'd had a 650, 800, I think it would have been better, but I think with the fairings and everything and the wind resistance, you're probably going to be happy to have a Goldwing. It's a more comfortable ride, but you would need to stay on the pavement, and you can do that. You just have to not go the southern part of Chile, go on over to Argentina, and the roads are better. Southern Chile it's just all gravel and mud and with some pavement, but but you have to have an off-road bike with off-road tires.
Setting a Goldwing back up is a hell of a deal anyway. It's over 1,000 pounds loaded, so.
Oh yeah, but there's people who've done it, and I saw people on Goldwings on every type of bike, especially if you go 2 up. You know, you have more room, you can carry more stuff, and but the BMW 1200, that's kind of the most popular bike for that trip.
I think if I did it, I'd plan on selling when I got there. And fly back.
Yeah, I thought about just running the bike off the cliff and watching it tumble, but I couldn't do it. Once I got there, I was like, me and the bike were as one, you know, and I couldn't do that. So, but.
Very cool.
Well, thank you guys. It's good talking to you, and hopefully we'll see you again. And I'm looking into joining the club, and I've spoke at many Rotaries, but I haven't joined any because I'm never in the same place 2 weeks in a row.
We got a ride coming up the beginning of May in Lewisburg, West Virginia. Going to be a 2-day ride, and it's a big loop around there. It's supposed to be.
Are you going on that one, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to make that one.
I'm unfortunately I have to be at our district conference that weekend.
I don't know if I'm going to be on the Triumph or that famous BMW that I have.
You going to do the Windy 9 in June?
I want to, but I'm supposed to be in Colorado on the 23rd, and that makes it a little difficult.
You got an airplane ticket and you got a motorcycle still sitting in Ohio, don't you?
Well, after I finish the Lewisburg trip, I'm riding the BMW back to Florida, and I'm going to put it on consignment or sell it for cash there at the BMW dealer. And then my Triumph goes out to Colorado, and that Harley that they couldn't seem to fix in 8 weeks gets sold.
Oh, boy. Guys, I'm going to have to go, but I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
You guys. See you next. See you all soon.
Later.
Bye, everybody. Always good to see you, Tom.
Take care.